All righty, welcome to Unsafe Spaces. I'm Randy Cross. This is Season 2, Episode 17, and we are officially underway. It's going to be a fun week for you. I've got a very informative guest, former Buffalo Bill. Jeff Nixon is going to be joining me, and you're going to learn a lot about what's going on with that NFL concussion settlement. But first, let's go to the commentary section. And this is more of a statement of what I think is obvious fact, but man, we need a whole hell of a lot of more J.J. Watts in the world of sports. This Texans star never ceases to amaze what he did around the whole hurricane in Texas and Houston, the kind of money he was able to raise, just through his Twitter account. And then just this last week, after those horrific shootings at Santa Fe High School down in Texas, JJ went down, visited the kids in the hospital, and offered to pay the expenses, the funeral expenses of all those that maybe could not. But, these are the kind of stories, these are the kind of people, unfortunately, rarely make big splashes in the news. Well, A, because it's usually not why they do it, and B, it's just not a sexy kind of story. Sadly, that's what matters. Now, if you're a stripper or an ambulance chaser or somebody like that, you get all the coverage you want. If you're an ex-Wisconsin football player who happens to be right now about the best defensive lineman in the league, and you do all these great social things, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. You're just doing it for attention. J.J. Watt doesn't need any more attention. But God bless guys like J.J. Watt, and we need more of them. A lot more of them. All right, as promised, right now we're going to go to the interview section of our podcast, and we're going to be joined by Jeff Nixon, former Buffalo Bill, University of Richmond All-American. He's got a lot of titles at this point, but he is the man to talk to when it comes to this NFL concussion settlement from the player's standpoint. Check this out. All right, now, as promised, joined now by Jeff Nixon, ex-Buffalo Bills, former All-American at the University of Richmond, and now the current director of youth employment in the city of Buffalo, and also a member of the board of directors of the Western New York Alzheimer's Association. Jeff, welcome.
Hey, it's good to be here, Randy.
Well, thanks. I also should add, I really enjoy your contributions at sportsblog.com. I find those pretty fascinating.
I've been doing that now for about blogging in general for about 10 years now. And at one time, I was the official blogger for the NFL Alumni Association. I also did some blogging for Fourth and Goal Unites. It's the group that Bruce Laird kind of oversaw down in Baltimore for the Colts. And then I started doing, after I was done with those groups, I started doing my own blog, and so I really enjoy it. I think I like giving guys information about not just the concussion settlement, but all the different benefits that are available, and how we can, maybe unite to get better benefits. Particularly I've been pushing for the pre-1993 guys because of, as in 93, the collective bargaining agreement gave basically free agency to the players, a limited form, but it's still, that exploded compensation to players. And then they started, giving, the more current players other retirement type benefits, the second career savings plan, the annuity plan.
Oh, health insurance.
Health insurance,
little things like that.
And I've always said, hey, look, before you start, creating additional retirement plans, do a little bit more for the guys that played before that time, and our pensions were really not that good. Now, they've gone back in the past couple of collective bargaining agreements and increased our pensions, so I'm happy with that. I still think they have a ways to go, but that's another story.
Well, and your recent blog you had, just the headline of it was NFL concussion settlement. How did the NFL underestimate the prevalence of Parkinson's disease?
Right.
This is the kind of information, Jeff, that not only players need, but the public in large needs more information relating to a lot of this, not from the information side as far as players in the game of football goes, but also the public in general. The prevalence of Parkinson's, they're just now starting to find out how much more common it is.
Right. And it's interesting in the settlement, the NFL made some projections on how many players they thought would get awards for Parkinson's disease. And in their projections, they said in the first year that they thought about 14 players would. Now they've already done like 64 awards. I mean, that's a huge amount. I mean, they had predicted they were going to spend about $7 million in the first year. They've spent $47 million already just on the Parkinson's. So the thing that I was curious about is why, did they underestimate this so much? And they really didn't have a clear way of knowing how many of these guys, the 20,000 that signed up for the settlement or are covered under the settlement, actually had it. They had, anecdotal information. They had some of the lawsuits, and they looked at the information that was submitted in some lawsuits. But a lot of the lawsuits were very basic. They just said that players had cognitive impairments and things of that nature. So, and they were also basing some of their analysis and projections on some of the older information that was out there about the prevalence. So, a new study was done recently showing that they even one hit to the head, a mild, traumatic brain injury can significantly increase the risk of developing Parkinson's. They said like 56% now.
And it wasn't just CTE, or it wasn't just Parkinson's. I mean, CTE, ALS, the numbers were a lot higher across the board, weren't they?
Yeah, they were, absolutely. They had projected that there were going to be 17 ALS rewards, but they've already done 30. And that's costing the NFL $86 million right there just for that. They had projected 51 of the CTE with death awards, and 63 have been approved. That's a little closer to their estimate, but that's costing them almost $78 million for that. Now, the big concern that a lot of guys have, because most of the submissions or claims have been for the level 1.5 and level 2 cognitive impairment. Those are lesser forms of dementia.
Right.
And, the NFL's, out of the, 1,830, I think 1,170 have been just for those two impairments. So most of the claims have been under that, and very few have been actually, paid at this point. I mean, they've only actually paid out 11 of those.
Wow.
Now they're saying that 133 players have received notices of monetary awards. In other words, they've been told they're going to get an award.
It's also known as the checks in the mail.
Well, in this case, it's not even the checks in the mail.
Yeah. Okay.
It's because some of those awards can still be appealed by the NFL, and some of those claims can be audited, and that's what we're finding. And I think that's the biggest thing that's delaying all these payments for these guys is they've gone under audits. Now the NFL has complained that there's widespread fraud. I don't know if you saw the HBO real time with Brian Gumbel last night, but the NFL has claimed there's widespread fraud. The attorney that represents us has stated that, he's not going to let a small number of claims be used as an excuse by the NFL to deny payment to the legitimately injured former players. And so that's important that he came out and said that, because I think that obviously the NFL wants to push back as hard as they can. I think part of it is because they didn't realize they were going to have to dish out so much money for Parkinson's, ALS, and CTE. I think
you mean actually have to pay a settlement on the settlement. I said actually pay settlements on the settlement they agreed to. I mean, it's $1 billion originally, right?
Well, originally they wanted to try, and the NFL wanted to try and cap it at $675 million. And we were saying, why is there even a cap on this? If you're saying you're going to pay all legitimate claims, and then why is there a cap? And so, our lawyers negotiated and a capless, I guess you could say,
right,
settlement, saying, hey, it can go as much as it wants. But in return, the NFL said, well, then you have to give us a little bit more power to appeal and audit and things like that, and so, we gave in on that, not realizing that the NFL was really going to try and hammer us over the head with these audits and stuff. And now let me say this, the NFL can't say, hey, I want that claim audited. They're not allowed to do that. All they can do is give information to the claims administrator. Now, the claims administrator is not associated with the NFL. It's an independent organization, company that and a lot of people feel that they're being influenced by the NFL. Well, we've got lawyers that have pushed back on a number of different issues and have beat them. I mean, keep this in mind. The NFL has appealed right now. Well, at one point, it was up to like 70 appeals. But out of all those appeals, they've only won 2 cases. They've only had 2 claims overturned. So, and that's because our lawyers are doing a good job helping these guys fight these appeals of the NFL. I don't know how many they're going to ultimately win. But the other thing that happens is the NFL, if they find out that let's say, through their own investigation, they find out that a guy is working and he's doing a blog and he's doing this and that and the other in the community, yet he got an award for level 2 cognitive impairment, then that would raise flags. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because, I'm not saying that you have to be a slobbering idiot to get an award, because you don't. You just have to have some severe memory issues, and they have to be kind of documented through the baseline assessment program, or doctors that came before that, that did assessments before January 7th, 2017. And a lot of the guys, have been upset because they kind of started changing the rules of the game. And that kind of happens with a lot of settlements that are as complex as this one, that, the lawyers say, hey, look, that's not right. And so the judge ordered them to, put together a brand new set of frequently asked questions, which is really the guideline for the entire settlement. I mean, it's amazing. And so a lot of lawyers, did that, and then things got a little bit better. I think the process got better, but the NFL is going to push back on all this stuff. They don't pay these lawyers millions of dollars for nothing.
Right. It's an interesting predicament they find themselves in, because over the last couple of years, they're yet to stumble upon a PR positive in a lot of ways, whether it's the anthem protests or this dealing with their ex-players or quite a few other subjects. The NFL could really use something from a positive standpoint. They could use a win off the field.
Yeah, they could. The NFL, let me say this. I think the NFL settled with us because they didn't want to be perceived as bullies of guys that have, neurological problems and cognitive impairment as a result of playing football. Mm-hmm. They were saying, look, let's just get this under the rug. Let's sweep this out of here. Let's cover all these guys. And going forward, it'll be interesting to find out whether or not any players that were not covered in this settlement going forward try to sue the NFL and just say, hey, look, we understand, we know that there's issues with cognitive impairment, but we still want to be compensated if we get injured.
Yeah.
And the NFL has set up a few things that are like the neurocognitive disability benefit. That's for any player that had a credited season after 1994. They can actually apply. They can, that pays anywhere from $15,000 for mild cognitive impairment per year, or up to $30,000 per year. So and not only that, but any player that was part of this settlement can go for that too.
Right.
So you can kind of do a little double dip if you do it right.
Mm-hmm.
Now players going forward, they can't sue the NFL and also collect that disability, the neurocognitive disability benefit.
Now I read an article earlier today about Scott Brantley, the former linebacker for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Just the article. Haven't looked into his case specifically. Don't know if you know anything about his case, but he had his Alzheimer's case denied.
Right. Okay.
And in the article, I mean, they actually talk about he's in a walker. He's pretty heavily impaired at this point.
Yeah, I think one of my biggest disappointments of the settlement was that they didn't say, look, anybody that's currently in the 88 plan, and not, for your listeners that are not familiar with that, the 88 plan is for anybody that contracted Alzheimer's disease or dementia or ALS or Parkinson's, and it pays for in-home care or out-of-home care in an actual facility. They called it the 88 plan after John Mackey, who was
Right.
like one of the first presidents of the NFL Players Association, and John had developed Alzheimer's, and his wife Sylvia Mackey, she was very instrumental in helping get this information.
She's a saint,
isn't she?
Yeah. What an amazing woman.
Oh, she really is, and so as a result of her efforts, and we pushed it too through. At the time, I was blogging for Fourth and Goal, and we had really pushed the NFL to get this thing done, and so they did. And but all of the players that have, and there was and this is probably going back about 2014 or 2015, there were about 250 players that qualified for the 88 plan. In other words, the NFL had agreed that they had Alzheimer's disease. Well, they were not automatically given an award under the settlement, which I thought was just crazy. They still had to go, present all these doctors' papers that, and diagnoses and fill out, go through the whole claim process, that whole thing. And some of them actually got denied, and some have been audited. I mean, it's amazing to me that could happen, but because of the way the settlement was structured, they still had to go through the process. And so I don't know. It'd be interesting to find out. And somebody just asked me about that the other day. They said, how many of these guys that were in the 88 plan have actually gotten compensated, under the concussion award settlement, and I said, I really don't know. Some of this information is protected under HIPAA, the health
unknown caller
program. So anyway, I'd like to see if I can find that out. It should be available. They don't have to, say what players were in it. They just have to give an overall, listing the number and, and maybe what age they were, things that don't reveal who the actual player was, but I'd be curious to find that out. And that, a lot of guys that, that have, the symptoms of Alzheimer's and cognitive impairment, they've gone through the baseline assessment program, or they've gotten diagnosed by doctors in what they call the pre-effective date before January 7, 2017. And they've had to gather up all this documentation, and it's very tough, especially if you're, these are players that are cognitively impaired. Yeah. The only hopefully they've got lawyers that can work with them, or wives or family members that can assist them. And I think that's happening in quite a few cases where players are represented pro se, by themselves, and so, but in complicated cases like this, I would, suggest. Now, I'm not saying they have to give a third of their award away. That's typically what happens when you file an initial lawsuit. But now that all that stuff is done, and we're at the point where they can file claims and get doctor reports, I think a fee for services would be fine with a lot of these lawyers.
Yeah,
that's what I suggest for the guys.
Well, I know from my standpoint, Jeff, I basically signed up as part of the suit and in the program, basically with the thought, do I have impairment at this time?
Right.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Let me say
but
this,
but at some point, if I do, I want there to be a recourse for my family. Is that the wrong way to look at it? Or?
No, that's absolutely the right way to look at it. As a matter of fact, we had two lead plaintiffs in the concussion litigation, and that Kevin Turner was one, and he had ALS,
right?
And then the other one was Sean Wooden. Now, Sean Wooden didn't have any significant, he complained that he was having little memory problems and stuff, but he was the representative for the class that basically had played in the NFL, had gone through some concussions, but wasn't really sure about the future and wanted to be able to, get compensated if something happens down the line. And so that's written into this concussion. Any player for the next 65 years can file a claim. Now, let's say these guys get denied right now, because they don't rise to the level of this level 1.5 or level 2 cognitive impairment. A few years from now, they can file again and maybe get that. There is a provision in the agreement where you can file in even less than a year after you were first diagnosed, but you automatically go into an audit program if that happens. So I would recommend, if players are going to do this, refile, maybe wait at least a year and then do the refile. It's not guaranteed that you'll be audited, but like it is if you do it in less than a year. But if you wait a year, who knows? I really think, let's look at this. They said that every single level 1.5, they estimated in the settlement, would eventually go to level 2. And all the research shows that anybody that's had this moderate and severe dementia, they go to Alzheimer's. It's going to happen. Yeah. Now we're finding through the research that they may even progress to Parkinson's, or maybe even skip Alzheimer's and just get Parkinson's. You know what I mean?
Right.
So players can file for additional, what they call supplemental awards, which will increase it to the level of Parkinson. Because those are much higher awards than the lower, level 1.5 and level 2. So yeah, we needed to make sure in this settlement that everyone that might develop an impairment in the future, gets compensated. What's nice about it too is, we know that the general population is going to get some of these things, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS, whether they played in football or not. So some of these guys, they may have only played 1 year in the NFL or 2 years now. They might get an award, for ALS that would have maybe naturally occurred anyway during their life. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
So that's the good thing about the NFL settlement is that, guys are going to get some awards that, for diagnoses that they may have received, they may have, contracted, regardless of whether they played football or not.
Now, if there's former players out there that are seeing this and whatnot, what's the best place to go for information? I mentioned your sportsblog.com. You're doing some great stuff there, but where else should players go to get information about this?
They have to go to NFL, it's just NFLconcussionsettlement.com.
Okay.
And that is the official website for the concussion settlement. Now, in there, what I would suggest people do is go to the frequently asked questions, the FAQs, and you can, anything you want to know about the baseline assessment program, monetary awards, how to appeal an award, what happens during an audit, just everything that you need to know is tucked in those frequently asked questions. So it's just NFLconcussionsettlement.com.
That's great. Hey, Jeff, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it, for taking the time and educating, making us all a little bit smarter.
Hey, that's what it's all about. I hope everybody, just does everything they can to protect themselves. I always want to make sure people are trying to do things in their life right now to prevent the onset of some of these diseases, because there are things we can do to increase our cognitive awareness, and the health of our brain. So we got to keep looking at that too. Yep. So Randy, thanks again, man. I appreciate you having me on.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
You got to take care. Bye-bye.
Well, great. Thanks again to Jeff Nixon. I don't know about you out there, but I learned a lot more about the subject, and I just think it's something I've got a vested interest, but I would love to see everybody keep track of this, because some of these afflictions are direct results from playing football, and unfortunately from a direct result of being lied about the effects of what we were doing. All right, let's move on now to Unsafe Spaces Sports. All right, three big happenings I wanted to note in the world of sports this week. Number one, the NBA Finals, or the NBA version of the Final Four. Out in the West, you've got the Golden State Warriors and the Houston Rockets. In the East, you got the Boston Celtics and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Both those series seem to be getting to be fairly intense. In fact, Houston beat Golden State last night on Wednesday night, and that's the first time Golden State's lost at home in almost 2 years. In fact, the last time they lost at home was when they lost Game 7 2 years ago to the Cleveland Cavaliers at home in the finals, and losing the finals to the Cavaliers. So that was a great game. That's a really good series. And on the other side, the Cleveland Cavaliers and Boston has been all kinds of fun to watch. And I'm not sure if Cleveland isn't going to just pull this out. I know Boston's a pretty tough team at home, but I got a sneaky suspicion that LeBron and company are going to pull this out. Now, we'll go on to the world of Major League Baseball. Something happened this week that, for me, I really thought was worth noting, and may not be a big deal in your world, but we had Jordan Hicks throwing for the St. Louis Cardinals, and back-to-back pitches, 104, 105. Then they adjusted it and said, the gun was a little off on the first one. It was actually 105 and 105. That's 105 miles an hour. The second thing to hit the mitt, if I'd have tried to throw like that, would have been my shoulder socket coming right behind the ball. 105 miles an hour. Are you kidding me? Check this video out, and you see if you can see this pill go across the plate.
Jordan Hicks still in the ballgame. Trying to get the final 3 outs.
Yeah, I would like to be standing there with a wooden stick in your hand, trying to track that sucker.
I have never seen that. 105.
How fast was that? It had a tail on it, and the catcher couldn't track it down.
You got to be kidding me.
This is good old Texas hardball right here.
I'd say so. 105 on the gun again.
104, 105, 104, 105. Wow. Sir, you have got a gun. That's fun to see. Really fun to see. All right, now let's go on to the one of the big other sporting stories of the week, and that is here in the Atlanta area. The NFL owners are in town, and they're talking about a lot of different things. They're talking about awarding, future Super Bowls to cities. In fact, Arizona and Tampa will get one later on today sometime. They'll announce that. They're talking about kickoff rule changes, other rule changes. Those were announced today, and if you're interested in that, keep track. Allegedly, there's a story involved that they're thinking about going and making a 15-yard penalty for kneeling at the anthem. 15-yard penalty? Are all you people that own NFL teams and in management, are you all such morons? Are you so smart you're that stupid? What's wrong with one simple idea? And it happens every damn Saturday and most Thursdays and Friday during the week. Come the later part of the season, college football does it right. There are no teams on the field when the national anthem is played. The teams come out after. That's the way it was done for years in the NFL. Is that too obvious a solution for you people? Come on. A penalty? That's asinine. Just don't have the players on the field and let them find some other way. You've already established a social justice fund, hundreds of millions of dollars. Contribute to charities, contribute to causes, and get the attention off this subject by eliminating the subject. They won't be on the field. Problem solved. You're welcome. All right, let's move on now to my favorite part, the weekly version of the Wambulance. Well, we're just talking about social justice and social justice warriors. How about this story? You've got a home educated kid, but also in the program of home educating, it's a Christian home education program in South Carolina. This kid is awarded summa cum laude designation. So his parents say, great, we're going to have a graduation party. We're going to invite all the family. We're going to make a cake. So they call Publix and they tell them exactly what they want written on it. They go online. They tell them exactly what should be on the cake, what color the frosting is, everything. What do they get back? They get back a cake that's missing the C-U-M. So instead of saying summa cum laude, it says summa blank laude, class of 2018. Explanation? The missing word was profanity. Here you go.
The signs of a graduation party are still left around the house of the Kaczynski family. Jacob graduated Saturday with the highest honors from a Christian-based homeschooling program, so his mom ordered a cake.
He did not know we were getting a cake because he's not a big cake eater. So we were all standing there waiting to see it, and when we opened it, it was a huge shock to all of us.
Kara Kaczynski explained how she ordered the 3/4-inch sheet cake online through Publix. But when she requested the bakery include Jacob's honor, she was alerted profane or special characters weren't allowed. Kara clarified her request with special instructions.
The website had censored me, and this is a website you can refer to for the Latin term for summa cum laude, which means with highest honors.
Kara said when her husband picked up the cake from Publix on Savannah Highway and Main Road, he didn't know the bakery omitted the middle Latin word. It was replaced with hyphens.
The cake experience was kind of frustrating and humiliating because I had to explain to my friends and family what that meant, and they were giggling uncontrollably. At least my friends were.
The Kaczynski said a manager from Publix apologized and offered a refund. For now, they're nibbling on the leftover dessert and looking forward to Jacob's freshman year at Wingate University.
Oh, man. Come on, people. It's Latin. I know it's a dead language. Well, in most ways it's dead, still used in a lot of places. But how you do that? I mean, how do you do that? But, hey, it could be a glitch. Blame it on the internet. Blame it on the website. Everybody else does. What the hell? Hey, let's go right now to, a feel-good story. We all need feel-good stories, and we got one for you.
I feel good. So good. So good. I got you.
Is there ever an instance where dancing babies are bad? I don't think so. I'll answer my own question. No, they aren't. And speaking of babies, here's the case of 7 Oklahoma firefighters. They're all in the same house, the firefighter house, the firehouse, and they all have these babies. Now, are they all the exact same age? No, that's not the point. Again, like I mentioned earlier about, it seems like it's never in a positive light. You hear about X, Y, or Z. First responders, be they EMTs, be they firefighters, be they police, these days don't get a lot of very good publicity. But this is a case where you just can't help but feel good about this kind of a story. Because, look at these kids. This is adorable. It's kind of like that dancing baby. I dare you to not feel good about these kids. There they are. That's the full lineup. All 7 of them. How about that? These guys got to look forward to their 48 hours on shift. when they're working for 2 days. At least those are the times they'll actually know they can get some sleep. Hey, I want to remind you where to find Unsafe Spaces USA. You go to randycross.com, go to unsafespacesUSA.com. Send any notes or comments to producer at unsafespacesUSA.com. And then you go to Twitter, go to Facebook, go to iTunes, SoundCloud. It's all over, Stitcher included. All right? Hey, we've got a new Happy Trails for you. And before anybody gets butthurt about this, it's just supposed to be funny. Check it out.
Until we meet again. Who cares about the clouds when we're together? Just sing a song and think about sunny weather. Happy trails to you till we meet again.